everybody calls me Steve. I don't believe in the Mr. Cohen. I always tell everybody, only my wife and kids call me that. I don't want people to feel they have to come up to a level. There's this thought that people have when they see a lawyer or a doctor, or that those people are better than they are. Mm-hmm. And that's a fallacy.
So what I'm really hearing is that you see people for who they are.
100%.
They could be a doctor or a lawyer or some sort of scientist, but that's really what they do as opposed to who they are.
100%. That's very well put, yeah.
Welcome to Riding Counsel with Rich Jaffe, where the open road meets expert advice. I'm Richard Jaffe, an attorney and biking enthusiast, and this is the podcast where we dive into the world of motorcycling, safety, culture, charitable giving, and riding right. So, whether you're a seasoned rider or just getting started, let's talk bikes, the road, and everything in between. Let's ride! Hello. Good morning, everybody out there. Good morning. We have a wonderful guest with us today. In fact, it happens to be my partner, my good friend, my life guide, my guardian angel. And why don't you introduce yourself for everybody?
Hi, I'm Steve Cohen, partner along with Rich Jaffe and Steve Tiger in the law office of Cohen and Jaffe. Really happy to be here, and let's talk about whatever we're going to talk.
This episode has been brought to you by Riding Counsel. Don't forget to visit us at ridingcounsel.com. All right. So thanks a lot for coming in. So you actually came up from Florida today.
Yes, I did. I came up yesterday morning just to be here.
All right. Excellent. So you flew into the Long Island region?
Yes, I did. Landed at LaGuardia, hit the snow, left 74 to come up here.
So you've gotten to this point. I mean, how long have you been doing personal injury law?
This is actually my 52nd year.
That's a long time.
That's a very long time.
So how did you start out?
Interesting. I came out of law school, got my first job with a very small firm, 2 attorneys. Took me about 4 months to realize I could do what they do. And I literally went out on my own, started introducing myself to store owners, people, anybody I would see. I would start doing everything, all kinds of law. And I gravitated into personal injury law, and I started to build a practice.
So let's even go back further. Let's go back further than that. Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
All right. So you're a native New Yorker.
Native through and through.
And you grew up in Brooklyn also?
I actually grew up in Queens, cross street from Queens College, 150th and Jewel Avenue. Great place to grow up in the 50s and 60s. Great place.
So what kind of stuff did you do, like as a kid when you were growing up?
Well, I would go to school, come home, drop the books, and head to the schoolyard. And you just started playing every type of ball. Played punch ball, football, basketball, stickball, baseball, everything.
So your parents were okay? Your mom and dad were at home?
My mom was at home. My dad was working 2 jobs. He would work. He'd come home, have dinner, then go out and drive a cab at night, and just whatever it took.
So you didn't come from a family of, call it professionals. There was
no
lawyers in the family. You
Just,
didn't get a leg up that way, and your parents didn't belong to a country club or have any of those kinds of connections?
No, we were hoping to make ends meet. That's what we were trying to do. Yeah.
So how is it that you think you made it to where you are from those humble beginnings? You know, you have parents who are working all the time, and your dad's working 2 jobs, and somehow you made it here to be a lawyer and a partner and running a successful law firm. What do you attribute that to?
I think I've always wanted to strive to do better, but I think the essence of trying to build a firm was finding the right people to surround yourself with, treating everybody like you would want to be treated. I have these little quirks as I started to meet people that everybody calls me Steve. I don't believe in the Mr. Cohen. I always tell everybody, only my wife and kids call me that. I don't want people to feel they have to come up to a level. There's this thought that people have when they see a lawyer or a doctor, or that those people are better than they are. Mm-hmm. And that's a fallacy.
So what I'm really hearing is that you see people for who they are.
100%.
They could be a doctor or a lawyer or some sort of scientist, but that's really what they do as opposed to who they are.
100%. That's very well put, yeah.
So where do you think you got these kinds of values from?
Oh, definitely from my parents. 100%. Very, very family oriented. It was always, every weekend, it was get in the car and we're going to see a grandmother here or a grandmother there, and that side of the family would all meet, and you learn about people, and you learn about what it is to care for people and to really feel for what people go through, not just in the good times, but in the bad times. And a real sense of family is just what my life's been about, and I like to think that's what the practice has been about.
So family is an important value for you, it seems like.
It's not important. It's the most important.
Mm. So when you say family, are you talking about, well, how does the value of family play out in your everyday life here at the firm?
Well, I think when you care about family and you allow yourself to understand that family just isn't who you're born into, that the people you meet along the way in life can become like family, and it's how you treat them and how they treat you, and that's what I'd like to think Cohen and Jaffe is about. It's about understanding what people go through and how you can help them in a friendly way, not in a almost like dictatorial way. You have to do this, you have to do that. Just understand what people are going through. You know, we deal in accidents, some incredibly serious accidents, and there's more to just what am I going to get at the end of this case. You got to help them get through these things. These are brutal. Sometimes it's brutal. How are they going to get through to the next day? How are they going to pay their bills? How are they going to get to the right doctors, the right treatment? And the one thing that I've always appreciated throughout all the years of the practice is how many people come back. How many people just call 5 years later, 10 years later, just say, I have a friend of mine, can you help them? And it's always on the phone. It's Steve there, is Rich there. It's not Cohen and Jaffe. It's people. It's the people within our firm, and that's what we convey. It's that all comes from the concept of family.
So I would gather the people you have known throughout your life is really a source of the clients that come through the doors.
Yes, it's the type of people. The type of people. If we feel a client doesn't see life that same way, is just more arrogant and abusive, we don't represent people like that. It's not about the money.
So it's really interesting that when they come through the door, meaning clients that are injured, when clients who are injured come through the doors, it seems that we do everything almost to prove that we're not a law firm, that we have to really connect with people because the connection is the most important.
That's very well put. That's exactly what we try to do.
So when clients call us up, is there some sort of restriction on the type of case that we accept here?
Well, we primarily do automobile accidents, motorcycle accidents, trip and fall cases, medical malpractice cases. So sometimes people will call, and if we don't feel that it's within our realm to handle, we'll always try to refer them to a specialist in the field who could do right by them.
So I suppose each accident that happens where somebody's injured has its own intricacies. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and one of the types of cases that we handle, unfortunately, are motorcycle accidents. I want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
So, motorcycle accidents, do you see them a lot in the New York City metro area and Long Island? Are they infrequent? Tell me a little bit about that.
I'd say we tend to see more of them on the island. There's much more, seems to be free riding, if you will, on the island than in the congestion of the city and the boroughs. And one of the great problems with motorcycle accidents is the severity of them. When somebody's in an accident on a motorcycle, again, the protection that they have is only the gear that they wear. And when they get hit, as the bike falls on them, that's what causes the real significant injury. It's the sheer weight of the bike, let alone the pounding onto the ground of the human body hitting it. So, and they tend to go at a proportionally higher speed because, again, there's no protection on the bike.
Right. So the protection that we're talking about, I mean, I'm here today and I'm in a vest. It's a leather vest, but I don't think leather vests really afford that kind of protection. I think bikers really have to think about the dangers of riding on Long Island and how visibility is a little curtailed because they have a lower profile, and they have to think about emergency situations. So they have to wear special kinds of pants and special kinds of gloves and things of that nature. So it's a stereotype that bikers have, I think, when they wear things like leather and they're all covered up and they have the helmet on. They look a little intimidating. And I'm wondering how that would play in the public's eye when somebody makes like an initial reaction when an accident happens involving a motorcyclist, who they automatically blame.
I think that's an excellent question. I think there is a perception, as you say, of the motorcyclist, the rough and tough rowdy, and no rules of the road to be followed, just go carefree. But I think as motorcycles have become sleeker and finer and more expensive, you're seeing a lot of affluent people, a lot of professionals, a lot of lawyers like yourself, a lot of doctors, dentists, accountants, all professionals want to ride. So I think that perception, that old perception of the biker is clearly on the downside, and people just see it as an activity that people enjoy. And the gear that is worn is, I think people understand, is much more protective than menacing.
Well, I've been doing this for more than 3 decades now, and you have a little bit on me. So you've been doing this for almost 5 decades.
Sure.
It's certainly something that we have to contend with as attorneys when we're presenting cases of motorcyclists who get injured in accidents, especially on the highways of Long Island where there's seriously aggressive drivers. So when we're presenting these things to a jury, I think what we have to work on is dispelling that perception, but also we have to work on what we were talking about before, meaning present to the jury of who these people are, meaning the bikers, who they really are. And they're not gangsters. They're not people who run around and drink all day and then go out on the road. It's not like the movies. And I think that's what we do with clients when they walk in here.
I think that's correct. I think there's also a misconception of the speed. You see a motorcyclist go flying by simply because it's not a car. You think that speed, he's going 100 miles an hour, whereas you take the same speed and somebody's in a car, you don't feel that because the wind isn't hitting them and they're not have the ability to go in and out. It's just that perception of the motorcyclist is like you say, it's not like the movies anymore. They have the same rights on the road, and as long as they adhere to the rules of the road, they should be protected, and it's our responsibility to convey that in a court of law.
So some of the things about motorcyclists, bikers getting into accidents seem to play out over and over. I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the similar scenarios, or the common scenarios, if you will, of how these motorcycle accident cases actually happen.
Well, we actually are handling a number of cases right now where a cyclist is on the right of way just going straight, and all of a sudden somebody makes a turn to go into a shopping area or to make a turn at an intersection. I don't think that most motorcycle accidents differ in any way from another accident. Instead of having an Eldorado Cadillac go flying down the street, you have somebody sitting on a motorcycle. But the accidents are the same. Sometimes with motorcyclists, as they try to avoid somebody who's making an improper turn, as they move their bike to the side, their weight causes them to slide off the bike, which puts them almost in, that's where you get the road rash, if you will. That's the difference really between a motorcycle accident that goes like that as opposed to two cars colliding where one can't go sliding along.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a lot of motorcycle accident cases that happen when the motorcyclist is going straight and the defendant driver in a car, or a cage as bikers commonly call it, makes a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn right into the biker. And what I hear most of the time when I'm doing these depositions, when I'm asking the defendant all the kinds of questions that a lawyer does, trying to find out how this accident happened, most of the time they say, I didn't see the motorcyclist before I hit him. And I think maybe in part that has to do with the fact that most motorcyclists have one light, or maybe they have two lights, but they're so close together that it's perceived as one light. And when a car is approaching, drivers commonly recognize the fact that there's two lights. So something, I think, in their head says, okay, the coast is clear, I'm going to make that turn because no car is coming. Do you find any truth in that?
I think you're giving a little too much credit to the driver of that automobile. I think when you're at a deposition and they say they don't see him, what it really is an old adage in law. You must see that which is there to be seen. And what happens, as in all accidents, motorcycle or not, nobody makes a turn knowing that a car or a motorcycle is right there. For that split second in their brain, they don't connect. I think it's the same with motorcyclists. It could be with the one light situation, it could make it even more difficult for the brain to notice that is there. But it's more often than not is a lack of attention. It's the old look right, look left, and as your head is turning, the bike or the automobile is still proceeding, and by the time you just go, the collision happens. So I don't think it's really unique to motorcycles. I think it goes to the driver of that automobile paying attention, like in any accident. The damages are just much worse. We recently took on a case where somebody made a left turn right in front of the motorcycle. There was nowhere for the cyclist to go. And if that was a car, it would have hit and probably would have pushed the defendant's vehicle. Instead, the bike hits the car and the motorcyclist just literally goes flying over this vehicle. And we have videos of this, and it's tragic, but that's the inherent danger, that you deal with when you're on a bike and hoping that everybody's driving as safely as you are.
Well, I myself ride. I ride a nice Harley. In fact, I just picked up a new bike, so I picked up a
Yeah, I know. I
24.
saw photos of it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great road glide, and it has everything imaginable. And these lights are the lights all over it, and I'm hoping people see me coming down the road. But it's a real pleasure to ride. But a lot of times, what I hear from people is that, wow, biking, that's you're a motorcyclist, and that's so dangerous. You're really taking on this high risk of really hurting yourself when you ride a motorcycle. What is it that you think about people getting on motorcycles and essentially assuming the risk of riding a motorcycle? Do you think it should curtail their rights to recover if somebody does something wrong and hits them and causes an injury because they're supposedly assuming the risk of riding a motorcycle?
No, I don't think that's true at all. And I think that goes along with the old perception of the motorcyclist and the big Harleys and the motorcycle gangs that you would see in Marlon Brando, which is a little before your time, but and all of these stereotypes. I think what people understand is what are the rules of the road. And if you're on a bike, you choose to be on a bike. It's a beautiful day out, and you're enjoying a ride, and somebody just cuts you off or turns in front of you. I don't think juries today say, well, you assume the risk. You assume the risk if you fall off your bike, while you're heading home, while you're going to park it, or if you run into a tree, just like anybody, it's like an automobile driver would assume. But juries today are much more intelligent and more open to listening to who's right, who's wrong. And if you're in the right, the fact that you're on a bike, I don't think there's that negative connotation anymore.
I think drivers really have to understand that they have a responsibility too. And just because a motorcycle is involved in an accident doesn't mean that they are free from fault. And I think, in fact, the law even reflects, at least in New York, that every driver, even every pedestrian, has the initial presumption that everybody else is going to follow the law. So I think if you're a driver and you don't follow the law, you don't have any kind of defense that somebody riding a motorcycle assumed any kind of risk.
100%. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. So there are certain things I think that bikers can do to protect themselves beyond what we talked about before. I mean, we spoke about some of the protective clothing, and certainly leather is great. I could tell you as a biker, leather is very comfortable, very malleable. It really feels good on, when you're biking, and it really conforms to your body, which is great. It protects against the rocks and things like that. So certain injuries that are inherent in riding a motorcycle without anything up front, you could protect yourself from. But how do motorcyclists, how do bikers protect themselves more, not from physical injury, but from what happens after an accident, if they're in an accident with a car?
It's an excellent question. In fact, it's a very important question. And I hope all bikers really heed what I'm about to say. When you have a bike and you purchase insurance, I'm talking about liability insurance, which says that if you're responsible for causing injury to somebody or property damage, your insurance company will cover up to the limit of what your policy is. So let's just say that somebody has $100,000 worth of liability coverage on their bike, which means if they strike me and I break my leg and I file a claim against them, their insurance company can pay up to $100,000.
So It protects the biker to $100,000 of insurance.
Right. That's
if the biker does something wrong.
Right. Now, if the biker is not the one who's responsible, somebody turns in front of them or something, well, what happens, the biker turns to the automobile insurance company, and like I said before, biker injuries tend to be worse because of the lack of protection to the body. So let's say they have a bad injury, they have a bad leg fracture, and the motor vehicle only has minimum coverage. In New York, the minimum coverage is $25,000. There are some states where it's 10. There are some states where there is no requirement for insurance. But let's take New York. So you're in an accident, you have a really bad injury, you're in the hospital, you need surgery, etc., and you find out that the person who caused this accident has minimal insurance coverage. Okay, the question is, have you properly insured yourself with your bike to protect in the event that you're in an accident with somebody who doesn't have sufficient insurance? Or also, if you're involved in an accident with somebody who doesn't have any insurance, they didn't pay their premium. Things like that constantly happen. What to do? There's a provision in an insurance policy that says that whatever limit of liability insurance you carry, in the example I gave, it's $100,000, you have a right to, for a very nominal premium, to have what is called underinsured or uninsured coverage, or a combination of both. It's called sum coverage, supplementary uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. And that says if somebody has, in this example, a $25,000 policy, I could accept that $25,000 and file a claim against my own policy, that I've been smart enough to protect myself, my family, things like that. The interesting thing is that people are concerned about filing claims under their own policy. They think there's going to be an increase in insurance. Insurance increases are based upon fault. Did you cause the accident? If you didn't cause the accident and you seek this underinsured or uninsured coverage from your own carrier, there's no increase in premium because you, in effect, didn't cause the accident. There's a misnomer that's out there, but I implore every person who owns a bike to properly insure themselves, not only for protection against being sued by somebody else, but protection for themselves. This is probably the least known thing that a biker deals with, okay? They just assume their insurance will cover them. It doesn't. You have to ask for it and make sure that whatever limit of liability you carry, you properly have that same amount of liability coverage to protect yourself and your family. Just one other point I want to make. When you deal with uninsured or underinsured coverage, your vehicle or bike doesn't have to be even part of the accident. If you're in somebody else's car and they don't have enough insurance, if you're walking in the street, you or your family, God forbid your family gets into an accident away and your motor vehicle, your motorcycle is at home. It's not even involved. The protection of uninsured and underinsured coverage will cover for that accident, even though the vehicle has nothing to do with the accident.
I think that's a really good point, a really strong point, that people do have to get uninsured motorist coverage or supplementary underinsured motorist coverage. But a lot of people will think that it's going to cost too much, or what's going to happen is I'm going to sue my own insurance and they're going to raise the rates because they're paying out. But I don't really think that's the truth.
No, it's not. As I said, as far as the cost of it, it's really a nominal amount. It's the old adage in New York, if you have to have minimum coverage of $25,000, to go from 25 to 100, the premium's not 4 times. It's about the initial insurance risk that the carrier sets the premium at, and then it's incrementally. It's so much smaller than anybody would think, and at the very least, people should ask about it and find out that it may cost $50, it may cost $100. It's a very nominal fee, and it's protection that that is essential for protection of any biker, any motorist, and their family. Just one other point I want to make. When you're driving a motor vehicle, and again, I'm going to deal with New York law. When you drive a motor vehicle in New York, every insurance policy in New York automatically has what's called no-fault insurance coverage. There's a minimum limit of $50,000. And that provides that if you're involved in an accident, regardless of how the accident happened, your medical bills, hospital bills, a percentage of your wages, your prescriptions, your physical therapy, anything to do with the accident will be covered under this no-fault coverage. Well, bikers don't get that protection.
Why not?
The law does not provide for no-fault insurance coverage for motorcyclists. What they can do, and they most assuredly should do, is cover themselves for what's called medical payment coverage on their insurance policy. And they can cover that. Again, it's different than no fault, but it will provide for protection of the medical expenses related to an accident.
So the med pay, if you will, that a biker gets on their insurance policy is their own coverage, but it just seems unfair. I know as a biker, I'm also interested in justice, and I don't want my insurance company, something that I paid for, to have to pay me and then nothing happened to the person who maybe doesn't have a license, maybe doesn't have insurance because they just thought they would save some money. I mean, times are tough, but I don't think that's something to save on. But does anything happen to the person who is responsible for the accident? It just seems that the only people who really get punished are the insurance company, who has to pay out for all of this coverage to the biker who is hurt, and also the person who's hurt. Those are the two people who really are paying, if you will. And does anything happen to the person who's actually responsible for the accident?
Well, we have to understand that accidents are civil litigation. So let's understand that. It's not, assuming there was no alcohol involvement by the defendant, assuming it's not a stolen vehicle, things of that sort. It's an accident, and because it's civil, so when we talk about what will happen to them, they're not going to be in jail. They haven't committed a crime just because they were in an accident. But when insurance companies pay out, okay, if the bike, to repair your bike, if you have collision insurance on your bike, well, your insurance company will pay, and then your insurance company will go after the other party. If you don't have collision insurance, then you have to go the same way you file for your personal injuries you would file for the damage to your bike. But it's insurance companies also have an understanding is sometimes they pay out and sometimes this carrier pays out. And that's why they collect the premiums. This isn't a criminal aspect, so nothing's going to happen to somebody.
I think what you're talking about is a concept. I think it's called subrogation. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
So subrogation, just what exactly is subrogation?
Subrogation means that when an insurance company pays you, they subrogate, they take over your rights to go get reimbursed from the party responsible. You see this when you have collision insurance. If you have collision insurance on your bike, you want to get your bike fixed. So you file a claim under your own collision policy, and you say to the carrier, your own carrier, fix my bike. And then the carrier says, okay, and whatever that cost is, let's say it costs $10,000 to fix your bike, they will take the rights that you have against the responsible party, and they'll go file the claim, and they'll go sue the person who caused that to get back the money that they pay out to you.
So the biker who's insured and who gets hurt, do they have to do anything special for the insurance company to do this whole subrogation to get the money that the insurance company pays out to the biker back from the person who really is responsible for this accident?
What they actually do is they actually assign their right to the insurance company, to the subrogation company, to go after the responsible party. They just have to get their vehicle fixed. And the difference is if you have collision insurance, you can get your bike fixed immediately because you have the coverage from your own carrier. You don't worry about dealing with the defendant's insurance company. If you don't have collision insurance, then you've got to go through their insurance company, and if they don't want to agree to a settlement, you have to sue them, and it will take a long time to get that claim resolved. Whereas if you have collision insurance, your company will pay it immediately, and you'll be back on the road.
So a lot of bikers out there, I'm sure, if they're in an accident, they don't want to pay anybody, and they think lawyers to represent them will actually charge them an arm and a leg, though maybe the exact ones that they heard in the accident. So what do you think about injured bikers hiring lawyers? Do you think it's something really they should do or shouldn't do?
I think it's essential for them to do that.
Why is that?
Because lawyers understand how to handle a claim, how to negotiate a claim, how to put forth evidence if they have to go to court. It's like bikers are no different than anybody involved in an accident. And it's the same mentality we spoke about before of what bikers are today as opposed to the perception of what they were, just rowdies, if you will, wreaking havoc. They're just everyday people who enjoy riding. So they should seek appropriate counsel the same way anyone would seek appropriate counsel. You go to a doctor when you're injured or sick. You go to a dentist when you have a toothache. When somebody has wronged you civilly, you go to a lawyer, and you let the lawyer do what the lawyer does.
Well, it can be confusing sometimes because I know when I turn on the TV, I don't like watching TV a lot, but there seems to be a lot of misperceptions that are portrayed on TV, on billboards by all these lawyers saying, we handle bike accidents. And you yourself have explained a lot of detail, but me personally, I have a problem looking at these bike accident commercials with people claiming that they are bike accident lawyers, these inflated claims to try to get you to walk in the door. And I'm wondering if you have a feeling about these.
Yes, I do. Again, I think when you take a look at the law, the law doesn't reprimand somebody for riding a bike. The law doesn't favor somebody for riding a bike. The law is the law. There are rules of the road. Who follows the rules of the road? Who disobeys the rules of the road? Who has the right of way? Who doesn't have the right of way? So when people go ahead and imply that they're experts in accidents with bikers, it's almost comical. It's the same way when you see advertisements of people, this firm got me $3 million and $5 million and this one, and they're all smiling, and I'm saying that really didn't happen. Or you'll see an ad, in 1 month I got $300,000. I'm doing this 52 years. That doesn't happen. It takes time to assess an injury. It takes time to get medical records. It takes time to understand. Some cases go very quickly. But these advertisements in the legal community have gotten so out of hand. And anyone who claims to be an expert in biker law, which doesn't exist, is just really doing a disservice to the public. Just say you're there to help people involved in accidents.
The ones I really don't like are the ones that say, okay, well, I ride a motorcycle, so you should hire me. I mean, why not say like, okay, I have 2 eyes, you have 2 eyes, why don't you hire me? Or I have a neck, I breathe, I'm a human being, so why don't you just hire me? I don't really think that's a good way to judge the ability of an attorney or if they're really going to serve you well. What kinds of things do you think injured bikers should look for when they're hiring an attorney?
I think they should look for the same thing that car owners look for. Go on, check the internet, ask around, look for reviews, see what other people think. And I think one of the most important thing is when you speak to a lawyer, can you connect with the lawyer? Are they talking down to you? Are you just going to be a number, a file in their office? Or are they going to actually care about you as a human being? And I think that's really important, not just for bikers. I think if you have a trip and fall case, if you have a basic motor vehicle accident, anytime you seek counsel, you should feel that you could just sit and talk like we're talking. Just talk to people.
I just don't see how just riding a motorcycle entitles a lawyer to say, hey, I'm going to do a better job on your case than this other guy. And that portrayal on TV and the internet just seems so false. And I think people really have to watch out for that. I think what they really have to pay attention to is, does this lawyer have the same kind of values and respect for me that I do other people? I really think that plays an important role.
But that's the connection I'm talking about. It's not connecting as a lawyer and a client. Can I connect with this person? Can I just call this person up and just talk to them, as opposed to being talked to? Can I relate to the person? I think that's for every single client who's looking to hire a lawyer. I think they really have to consider that. Get on the phone and talk. Are you comfortable with this person? Is the person going to pick up the phone when you call after you've signed the retainer, a month from now, 2 months from now? The one thing that we try to do at Cohen and Jaffe is we try to make that connection. We try to make people understand that we're just like them. We just happen to practice law. They may be manufacturers. They may be farmers. They may be mechanics. It's just what they choose to do in their livelihood. And we make it clear that you have a question, you pick up the phone. And we have teams in the office of people to talk to. Each client gets assigned a team. There's a lawyer, there's a paralegal, there's a medical records paralegal. And each one will be able to help you in an area. And if you're not satisfied with what the first person says or the paralegal says, if you want to speak to the lawyer assigned, you speak to the lawyer assigned. If you want to speak to you or I or Steve Tiger, you just ask. That's what connection is. That's being able to feel somebody's looking out for you.
I'll tell you something that riding really does for me is, unfortunately, I do know a lot of bikers who I'm out there riding, and sometimes I ride in groups, and somebody would be missing from the group, and I'll say, hey, what happened to John or Jim or whoever might be usually riding in that group? And somebody will say, oh, he got into an accident, he really banged himself up. But they know that anytime they see me out on the road, when they get back on the road, that they don't even have to call me because I'm right there riding beside them. You know, we share the same meals, we go to the same club meetings, so they actually see me out and about, and they can always approach me, and they know me not only as a lawyer, but as a rider. And I think riders have a certain bond with one another. So in that regard, I can see where the importance is of a motorcyclist like myself who represents injured bikers can really relate to another biker. But at the bottom line of it all is that I have the same values as they do. I have a family. I have kids. I really want to take care of them because I'm who actually takes care of them all the time. And I understand that, and I don't necessarily think you have to be a biker to really understand that. I think we all understand that here.
You have to be a human being first. As That's essentially what it is.
So you've really given us a lot of valuable insight, Steve. Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it. You've taken a lot of time out and explained a lot to the audience, and I hope people find that information useful.
I appreciate the time. I enjoyed the podcast, and anybody has any questions, I'm always available. Just pick up the phone. Happy to speak to anybody, and continued good luck with the podcast.
How about safe riding?
Safe riding, yeah.
Okay. And that's a wrap for this episode of Riding Counsel with Richard Jaffe. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow riders. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and ride safe.